In a crowded cafe, they sat together for just 5 minutes. But something in the air shifted, so quietly neither of them noticed at first. A laugh that felt too familiar. A touch that shouldn't mean anything, yet somehow changed everything. From that moment, every small detail, a warm cup of cocoa, a spontaneous photograph, pulls them deeper into a story they're not quite ready to name. Their love began by accident. But the accident felt inevitable. And now the world around them seems to know something they haven't realized yet.
Love Stories Max. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching, friends.
5 minutes of fate. I can still remember that smell. Freshly ground Arabica. A little caramel. Something with a hint of cinnamon. That day, the cafe was packed as if the whole neighborhood had decided to hide from the cold wind in the same place. Outside, a light snow was falling, more decorative than real. You know, the kind that looks like someone above was shaking out a pillow filled with white fluff. I was standing there with my latte, searching for even a sliver of free surface, thinking, "Great job, Rachel. This is exactly why you did not need to come here today. You could have just made coffee at home." And then I saw it. The only free spot, a tiny table by the window. For two. And at that exact moment, he walked toward it. Dark jacket, slightly messy hair, a steaming Americano in his hand. He looked like he was also not prepared for a fully packed cafe. But walking in here had been his best decision all week. We exchanged a quick mix of, "Oh, sorry, were you?" "No, I." Then he smiled, warmly, not performative, not smug, but friendly, real. "Mind if we share? Just 5 minutes?" he said, raising his brows a little. I nodded. Honestly, I would have agreed to even 30 seconds. We sat down. Those 5 minutes we promised each other stretched out so quietly and naturally that when I finally looked at the time, an hour had passed. And we were laughing like we had known each other for 10 years. "Do you always laugh this loudly?" Anthony asked when I bent over for the 3rd time from laughing, trying not to spill my half-cold latte. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" I lifted one eyebrow. "That was merely a statement of fact," he said, taking a sip of his coffee, looking out the window as if the street outside was showing the best movie of the year. Though it seemed he was not really looking outside, more like into his own thoughts. We talked about little things. How he always orders an Americano with no milk because milk destroys the soul of coffee, and I coquettishly defended my latte. How he has this strange habit of noticing people's shoes. How I have a passion for old films full of haze and feeling. And then, something shifted. We crossed this thin line between two strangers and two people who suddenly want to open up. "I rarely talk like this with strangers," I said around minute 47 of our 5-minute break. "And I rarely meet people I actually want to talk longer with," he answered. "You know how in movies there is that exact moment when the music changes? Something clicks inside? Well, something clicked in me. When we finally got up, he took my cup to throw it away together with his. A small gesture, but somehow incredibly warm. It was nice, I said, though nice was a weak word. It felt as if someone had sprinkled glitter and tiny sparks into the air. So, maybe we could meet again, he asked, simply, as though he were asking me to pass the salt, but his eyes gave away genuine nervousness. We could even sit at separate tables if you want to preserve the tradition, I joked. He laughed, quietly, with a slight tremble in his voice, like it really mattered what I would say next. I dictated my number. Rachel. He repeated my name slowly, as if making sure he was saying it correctly. It is really nice to meet you. Truly. That evening he texted me. Not the usual, "How are you?" Not, "Did you get home safe?" He wrote, "I feel like I can still smell the cinnamon from that café. I hope it is not a hallucination but a memory of today." And that is when I realized I like him more than I had planned. And I had absolutely no plans. Our first official date was 3 days later. He brought me a tiny caramel chocolate bar to support your latte interests, and I brought him a scarf I had knitted back in autumn and never gave to anyone because I need to find the right person. He stood there in front of me, laughing softly, touching the ends of the scarf with his fingers. "You are kidding. There is no way you knew this was my favorite color." "I really did not know," I confessed. "It was just intuition." He stepped closer, close enough that I felt the cold of his jacket and the warmth of his gaze. "Intuition is your superpower," he said. "Because you guessed right. Our story did not explode like in those fast-paced romances where everything happens immediately. No, it grew quietly. From that small table by the window, where there was barely enough space for 2 people, yet somehow enough room for something much bigger to take root. We drank coffee dozens more times, sometimes laughing, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence, sometimes watching people outside and guessing their stories. I fell in love with the way he held his cup with both hands. His gentle pauses before answering. His habit of taking off his glasses when he was nervous. His smile that began in the corners of his eyes before it ever reached his lips. And one evening he told me, "Rachel, I always thought the best stories begin in silence. But ours began in noise, surrounded by 100 people. And somehow, in that chaos, I heard you." And that was the moment I understood that 5 minutes can last an entire lifetime. We were walking along the river that evening, when the city was already tucking its lights under an early winter mist. The air smelled like wet stone, a bit of chimney smoke, and something sweet and elusive, probably my own nervous anticipation. Anthony walked beside me, brushing my shoulder every now and then, accidentally, but I knew. Every touch was intentional, cautious, shy, warm. "Did you notice?" he asked softly. "We always walk a little closer than we need to." I smiled. "And do you want to go closer?" He stopped, gently, as if someone set the world on pause. Then he reached out, not to take my hand, not yet. Just to brush the edge of my coat sleeve with the tip of his finger. "Can I?" he whispered. "Be closer?" My heart did that ridiculous warm jump it always does right before everything changes. "You can," I whispered back. He stepped toward me slowly. So slowly I had enough time to count my breaths, to feel cold air blending with warm excitement. His hand touched mine, tentative at first, almost asking. I intertwined my fingers with his. A soft gesture, but it sent a warm wave through me from the inside out. "Rachel," he said my name like it was something delicate. "I want to kiss you. But I do not want to rush if you." "I want to," I interrupted, just as softly. And then he took the step I know I will remember all my life. His fingers rested gently against my cheeks, thumbs brushing my skin, and then he leaned in. His breath smelled like coffee and the caramel chocolate bar he brought me on our first date. His eyes were so close I could see the reflections of the street lamps in them. The kiss was not fast. It was slow, almost shy, but so sincere that something in my chest folded in on itself. It felt like he was saying, without words, "I am here. I am with you. And this matters." We stood like that long enough for the light snowfall to settle on our shoulders. When we finally pulled back half a step, he smiled. That quiet smile of his that starts in the eyes before it reaches the lips. "You know," he murmured. This was the most beautiful beginning I could imagine. I touched the scarf I had given him and whispered, "I have a feeling we just found our starting point." After that kiss, we stood in silence for a long moment, as if afraid that any sudden movement might break the fragile beauty of it. Snow drifted around us like tiny sparkling grains, and the river murmured below, calm, steady, almost in rhythm with our breathing. "Do you want to walk a bit more?" Anthony asked quietly. "I want, not to rush anywhere," I replied. So we continued down the riverbank, hand in hand. Not shyly this time, confidently, as if our fingers already knew exactly where they belonged. The street lamps cast warm oval patches of light on the cobblestones. Delicate ice crystals cracked softly beneath our steps. I could feel the calm warmth that radiated from him and realized I could not remember the last time silence with someone had felt this safe. "Rachel," he said suddenly, "I am always afraid I say too much." I laughed. "Good thing you do not know how much I think too much." He turned his head. "Like what?" "Like," I inhaled the cold air. "Like I do not want this evening to end." He did not reply right away. Instead, he gently squeezed my hand. The kind of squeeze people give when they truly understand the unsaid. We reached a small footbridge with a bench nearby, covered with a thin white layer of snow. Anthony brushed the snow off with his sleeve, an old-fashioned gesture, charming in a way that made something inside me melt. "Sit," he said. "It is a beautiful viewpoint." I sat. He sat beside me. Our knees touched, and that small touch sent warmth through me like a quiet spark. "Aren't you cold?" he asked. "A little." "Then come closer." He unfolded the scarf I had given him and draped part of it over my shoulders. The warm scent of his jacket and my scarf blended into something painfully homey. "You know," he said after a pause, "I thought I was just going to grab a coffee today. And it turned into It turned into meeting someone I do not want to put a period after. Those words hit directly into my chest. Gently, very gently, I leaned closer and rested my head on his shoulder. He flinched just a little, surprised. Then slowly, with that same careful tenderness he had shown by the river, rested his head against mine. We sat like that long enough for the world around us to blur. I could hear his breathing, steady, warm, peaceful. I heard the tiny hesitation every time he inhaled as if wanting to say something, then changed his mind. And I loved the silence so much that I did not dare break it. When we finally stood up and began walking back, he wrapped his arms around my shoulders from behind, as if afraid the cold might steal me away. "I do not want to let you go," he whispered. "Not tonight, not tomorrow." And I believed every word. That evening did not end with fireworks or dramatic music. It ended with two hearts walking side by side through a snowy city, gently beginning to tune themselves to one another. It happened a week after our first evening together. Winter had already begun swirling through the streets like a mischievous orchestra of cold wind, and even the bravest neighborhood cats were hiding under radiators. Anthony invited me over, for 10 minutes, just to warm up. I knew, of course, that his 10 minutes were as realistic as our 5 minutes at the café the day we met. His apartment was warm and slightly chaotic. Books on the windowsill, a sweater/blanket on the armchair, a lamp glowing softly in the corner like a tiny sun that decided to settle indoors. It felt so cozy that I nearly took off my shoes out of pure instinct, the instinct of being somewhere safe. "Sit," he said, already rummaging in the kitchen. "I will make you hot cocoa." "You know how?" I teased. "I know very little," he replied, "but cocoa is my family's craft. Passed down on my father's side." I listened. The clink of a spoon, a muffled, "Ow," he definitely burned himself, the hiss of milk almost boiling over, followed by his rushed, "Do not you dare. I know you always try to escape." When he finally came out, he was holding 2 large mugs. The foam on top caught the light like small golden brown clouds. "For you," he said, handing me the mug, brushing my fingers intentionally. I took a sip, and nearly melted. "Oh my God, this is the best cocoa in the world." "I know," he said very seriously, though his eyes were smiling. "It only works when I make it for someone I like." My fingers warmed instantly, my heart even faster. We sat on the couch under his blanket. The cocoa steam rose between us like a tiny warm curtain. Every now and then, his knee brushed mine, accidentally, of course. I pretended not to notice, but each time the touch rippled through me. "I could make you cocoa every winter," he said quietly. "And I could come over every time," I whispered. And in that moment it was clear. This was not an accident. This was a beginning. It happened spontaneously, like all the best things. We were walking through the park after a light snowfall. Trees stood covered in white layers like a giant meringue dessert. I took out my phone to photograph a ridiculously oversized snow-covered bench. Anthony raised an eyebrow. Why is everything in your gallery here except us? Because I hate photos of myself, I muttered. All right, he said, stepping closer and gently touching my shoulder. Then let me make one you will actually like. He turned on the front camera, but he did not snap the photo right away. He moved in close, pressing his cheek lightly to my temple, and whispered, "Ready? No. Perfect. Click." In the picture, we stood very close, almost comically close. My cheeks were pink from the cold. His eyes had that look, the quiet one he got whenever he looked at me, like the world had just settled into place. "Save it," he said softly. "This is our first proof that we exist together." I saved it, and re-watched it later more times than I would ever admit. Until he texted me, "We need at least 100 more. I have not finished playing with your photos yet." Sometimes Rachel thinks their love truly began at that one tiny table in the crowded café, as if someone gently nudged them from above, whispering, "Right here. Sit right here." And life just listened. Months have passed, yet she still pauses on the sidewalk every time she gets one of Anthony's warm little messages. "Did you leave home yet? I got your favorite croissants." The evening's waiting for us. Somehow, each line softens the world around her. They've learned to weave each other into the everyday. No grand declarations, no dramatic scenes. Just naturally, the way people breathe without thinking. Their days are made of small, intimate rituals. He leaves her a cup of cocoa covered with a napkin so it stays warm. She slips silly heart-shaped notes into his coat pocket. He'll pull her into a spontaneous dance in the kitchen, and she laughs so brightly that the neighbors probably think they're hosting a private concert of happiness. Sometimes they go back to that same cafe, sit at the same table. Their table now. The barista smiles knowingly. Trying the 5 minutes only thing again? Rachel blushes. Anthony squeezes her hand under the table. 5 minutes turned into an entire universe. On nights when the city quiets before they do, they lean their foreheads together and whisper almost the same words. "I'm so glad you sat next to me that day. I'm so glad you asked." And Rachel always thinks, some stories don't need to be guided. They grow in the right direction on their own. Maybe their love started by accident, but it always felt inevitable.